What is meditation and why should I do it? By Matthew Brown, featuring an introduction by Chester Brown, the great underground cartoonist. No relation, but he is my favorite living cartoonist. What is meditation and why should I do it? By Matthew Brown. Introduction by Chester Brown. Edition Trip Comics of Montreal. Kaboom! That's Chester Brown. Mark Tessier did a little photo collage of Chester. And I'm not going to read Chester's introduction, but it's pretty nice that he did one. Chester has an interest in spirituality and meditation. His path is more Christian, I think. It's fair to say. But definitely he's a great guy. He's a friend, and I'm really happy he did this little introduction to the book. Questioner. What is the purpose of meditation? Nisargadatta Maharaj. We know the outer world of sensations and actions, but of our inner world of thoughts and feelings, we know very little. The primary purpose of meditation is to be conscious of and familiar with our inner life. The ultimate purpose is to reach the source of life and consciousness. I am that. Chapter 6, Meditation. Hi, I'm Matthew, your trusty host. Welcome to my graphic novel. Thanks for coming. What is meditation and why do it? These are questions heavily related to my life, and sometimes people ask me them. I can say what it is to me and why I do it, what it's been in my life, and how I think it might help other people. First and foremost, I doubt there are many comic books about this. Meditation is an inner experience, and how can you do a comic book about that? I will try to throw in some juicy pieces from the outer life, the sex, the pain, the humiliation, the exhilaration, and the laughs, and about the great meditation teachers too. So it should, at the very least, be entertaining, and at the most, very useful. One thing it should never be is boring. If you find this comic book boring, please put it down immediately. Burn it, shred it, throw it into a river, or give it to somebody else. There's me, sitting there in my meditation outfit in the summer. Brutal honesty, folks. What is meditation? Hold on. Okay, here we go. What is meditation and why should I do it? Over the years, many people have asked me this question. One person asked me, is it like when I stare at the wall and space out? My mother said to me, when I go jogging, it's like meditating for me because I stop thinking. And my ex-boss even said to me, when I need a break from everything, I ride my bike to clear my mind. I'm not sure why. So I guess I've become a sort of bizarre spokesman for meditation. Since I do it every day, fall, and I talk a lot about it. Blah, blah, blah. You should meditate, blah, blah, blah. But why did I start and when? The mists of time. When I was 19, I finally took an existentialism class. Yippee! Hall building, Montreal, existentialism. And here were all these heavy European thinkers saying that religion was over. God is dead! Nietzsche. We lived in an empty void where we had the responsibility to decide meaning. Sartre. We needed a leap of faith. Kierkegaard. We could only trust in the isness of things. Heidegger. But by and large, Despite being paid just to think and getting laid fairly often, they seemed fairly glum. Maybe I should get existence precedes essence tattooed on my forehead. By contrast, randomly pulling books off the shelf in the Concordia University Library one day, I found a book of essays on Zen Buddhism. No internet yet. Here, the same void which bummed out the Western thinkers was a cause for joyful celebration and delight. I wrote an essay on it. Early word processor. I found other books with exciting glimpses into Eastern spirituality. Yes, this is it. Tao of Physics, Part, Can't Sit Still. By chance, while taking a spontaneous barefoot walk. Baba by Arnold Schulman. Baba, that's a funny name. And of course, I went to India right after university. Multi-armed gods, singing children, Jesus, Krishna, Allah, cows. It blew my mind. I first tried meditating by the side of the Ganges. Fellow traveler, army boots. Breathe to a spot 2 fingered widths below your navel. I didn't really see the point at the time. Thanks. Now I can go see that cute Japanese girl. Wobbly knees. Upon returning to Canada, I attended teachers' college, but I developed insomnia due to stress. I can't believe I have to teach. Picking up yet another Zen book at random. How much is this? Zen by Charlotte Joko Beck. Instead of graduation, I took an overnight meditation course in Toronto. Dutch Dreams Ice Cream, Zen Buddhist Temple. Count your breaths in Korean from 5 down to 1. Finally, some peace. From Halifax, Nova Scotia. That was 20 years ago. Middle-aged, the mists of time. My understanding has changed. How I do it has changed, but I still do it every day. Don River. So, before I get to that part, let's talk about my first meditation superhero, the Buddha. Not interested. Buddha was originally named Prince Siddhartha, thousands of years ago in Nepal. As a child, he was good at everything, but he wasn't allowed to see the suffering of the world. No. So he snuck out with his trusty horse and his servant, super excited. He saw poor people, old and sick people, dead people, and got depressed. That night he swore to leave the life he had known in the palace. Sorry, son. Sorry, wife. He shaved off his princely locks and set off as a mendicant. Spare $1? Skinhead. He found a few teachers, but rapidly mastered all they had to offer and was still unsatisfied. How about teaching with me? We could make a killing. Nah. Then he decided to practice austerities with some ascetics. No shower, no sleep, no internet. I guess I'll do no food. All right. I won't eat until I reach enlightenment. 3 days. 3 weeks. This sucks. 3 months. Finally, he stumbled off under a tree where a little girl brought him some gruel. That's more like it. Moderation from now on. Now I'm going to sit here and meditate until I either die or reach enlightenment. He sat for quite a while, dealing with urges and agonies, fighting inner demons, until finally he opened his eyes and smiled. Thanks for the food, kid. Wobbly knees. He sought out his former ascetic companions. Whoa, dude, you look super austere. What happened? I am awake. And that's what the name Buddha means, awakened. Life is suffering. It's caused by clutching onto things, but it can be avoided through insight. The first Buddhists, Ganges River. The Buddha continued to wander and teach for 40 more years. That's heroic. That's dedication. Fat on couch. A few things I really like about the Buddha. Traditional depiction. Long earlobes, enigmatic half smile, halo, top knot, third eye. downcast eyes. To summarize, anyone can become a Buddha. All lives are equally valuable. Positive attitude. To elaborate on the previous points, A, anyone can meditate and practice compassion. An old lady on the bus, a young thug, a squirrel. No one is worth more or less than anyone else. CEO of a large corporation, an urchin living on the streets, a flower, or a spider. C. And what do I mean by positive attitude? Let me explain the moment I really became, a Buddhist. The mists of time. I had just seen a movie about World War II. It was okay. The villain was hot. Friend from Windsor. But the story was boring. Blah, blah, blah. I can't believe we live in a world where the Holocaust happened. Human beings suck. There's no point in living. But wait, what about the Buddha? Suddenly, if a person like him could exist, there must be hope. Blah, blah, blah. Ice cream? Sure. Hold on. Sorry. I accidentally... Hold on. There we go. Blah, blah, blah. Ice cream? Sure. Next hero, Lao Tzu. Not much is known about his life. Father of Taoism. He had been an official in the Chinese court bureaucracy. Stamp. He was also very wise from closely observing nature. Water is soft but powerful, and the valley is receptive. Pig! On retirement, he wanted to disappear. Wilderness. Civilization. But a border guard begged him to share his wisdom before leaving. Okay, just one drink. Violence, even well-intentioned, always rebounds back upon oneself. Right. The universe is forever beyond our control. It's best to follow its natural patterns rather than resisting. Right. Trace back the manifestations to find the source. Go within your true void nature. This is peace. Yes, master, yes. I need to take a piss now. He was earthy. A man of few words, but he left us the Tao Te Ching. Cool. When I was at my lowest point in teacher's college, I even used to repeat to myself, Tao, 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 Windsor, Ontario. It helped keep me sane then, and sometimes it still does. Oh, and I forgot to mention you're fired. Tao, Tao, Tao. Huh? However, although Buddha and Lao Tzu were definitely enlightened masters, they're ancient, not exactly youthful. The mists of time. Are we totally lost in the modern age? Isolation! Joy Division lead singer Ian Curtis killed himself when he was 23, 1980. India proved to me otherwise. In Varanasi, I could feel wisdom as love and truth. Home? 24 years old, 1996. And it was here that the third hero appeared. I'm done this book on Buddha. Here, have it. Take this one as a trade. 2005. No, I don't want it. It had an odd yellow and black cover, like a phone book. I guess I'm stuck with it. A powerful spiritual classic, I Am That by Nisargadatta Maharaj. I had a whole day to kill in Delhi, waiting for my flight home. This is it! Nisargadatta Maharaj seemed to pick up where Buddha and Lao Tzu left off. I am is all you can be sure of. This beingness is love. Go into it to discover the absolute. He had been a modest cigarette seller who died in Bombay in 1981. I'll have 2 packs of smokes, 1952. Sure, you are one with everything. When I got back to Canada, I looked him up on the internet. Hum-de-dum, 2007, procrastinating in architecture school. And there you have the 3 basic philosophies in my life. Buddhism, Taoism, and Advaita. But something was still missing. 2016. 2002. Uh, my God, I'm lonely. I'm unable to love. Ah, yeah. Dial. Fred? I feel like shit, actually. So do most people. Fred. Really? Yup. Fred was a member of the Zen temple who was also a counselor and registered massage therapist, trained to Oakville. I feel minutely better already. I haven't made any friends in years. I'm not meeting anyone new, and my old friends aren't calling me back. Do you listen to people? Of course! Your homework this week is to listen to people. What if they stop talking? Ask them questions. Although the advice to listen sounds simple, it's probably the best advice I ever got. Train back to Toronto. What are you reading? And there was more. The only thing that never changes is your sense of presence. Listen to your body. Feel where you are present. Old pain is locked away as blocks in your body. Healing these, you can heal your emotional patterns. What happens when I finish healing all my patterns? Then you're happy. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Well, you don't have to be happy if you don't want to. 2002. And that was the crux of it, involvement. Fred's self-healing and awareness process was the same as meditation and awakening, and that laid the groundwork for a way out of misery. 2016. Nisargadatta, via Muzika, laid the path for understanding, and Prack laid the path for self-healing. I'm going to interview both my living teachers, Ed and Fred, in this comic. And then I'm going to try to describe what it feels like to meditate. Boop. Interview 1. A conversation between Edward Ed G. Muzika and Matthew Brown via Skype, Toronto to Arizona, August 9th, 2016. Ed G., have you ever been interviewed in a comic book before? No. What is meditation, and what is the point of it? There are literally thousands of different kinds of meditation. All of which you could say aim at becoming aware of different aspects of yourself that had been out of awareness prior to that point. So it's developing an inner awareness, but the paths on which meditation can take you are infinite. What started you on the spiritual path? Reading a book when I was 11 years old called In Woods of God Realization by Swami Rama Tirtha. But I think the urge to understand myself and God was there even prior. And that it became stronger when my father died when I was 14. Then I began reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead and others. Trying to talk my father through the Bardo states. But then finally, after off and on meditation for many years, I was 26. I had completed a master's degree. I was in a doctoral program and I got out of that. I was working and I decided I've got enough of all this superficial knowledge about the external world, which was never very convincing. So I decided to leave everything behind and become a wandering monk, looking for truth and self-realization. I took with me 3 books, Who Am I? Ramana Maharshi. Three Pillars of Zen by Roshi Philip Kapleau. The Buddha. And I was looking for myself. I began going to various monasteries, Zen centers, and so forth, till I finally met Robert Adams in 1989. He was my final teacher. How old were you when you met Robert? About 46. So 20 years after you first started. Right. You had many teachers along the way, though. Oh, many. 6 or 7 Zen masters whom I spent at least 6 months each with. Meizumi Roshi was one of the best. Sasaki Roshi was one of the most famous. He died last year at age 107. Seng-san Sun Sa, everyone knows him, the Korean Zen master. Thich Thien An, who was my ordination teacher, and there were several others. And then I went to Muktananda, a Hindu guru, because Zen was so bereft of emotions. He was talking about the self, but he never defined the self. So he wasn't too helpful. Do you feel having studied with all these teachers was helpful? I guess you learned something from each of them. Something. Yeah, but what you learn is spiritual knowledge. It's not really self-realization. You learn something from tantric teachers. You learn something from Advaita teachers. You learn something from this teacher. You learn something from that teacher. But if it's not invested in a single-minded need to find self-realization, who you are, it's kind of running around the edges without dropping into the center. From my point of view, the real path is self-realization. And all the others are wasting time or going the long roundabout way. What happened when you met Robert? What was the change? I had forgotten and given up on my spiritual search. And when I met him, I just recognized him as my teacher. Robert, where have you been my entire life? Oh, I've been around. With Robert, I made a decision to surrender. You had an awakening experience after Robert had left Los Angeles in 1996, Hollywood, Sedona, Arizona. Exactly, 2 of them. One was when I was taking a shower and I looked within, like I had a million times before, looking for the self that was feeling the water falling on my body. And I looked within, and there was only emptiness. And then it snapped, that there was no inside me. There was no Ed inside. There was no persona inside. There was no soul inside. There was no discrete, cognitive, independent I inside. There was just the totality of emptiness, which was all over, totally inside and outside. There was no difference. It was just space, infinite space in all directions. There was no more Ed Muzika. I was the totality of space. And did that feeling stay consistent for a long time? Let's say it was very disconcerting to believe that you are a human being, making decisions and being alive, to then discover that you were no such thing. It was very disorienting and somewhat frightening at first. As a matter of fact, I called Robert up in Sedona. Robert, I'm scared. I don't know. I don't exist. Sure you exist. You're talking to me, aren't you? But that state lasted only about a year. And then gradually, I returned. Robert passed away in 1997. I had a realization about 15 years later, where I discovered myself, my manifest self, as an explosion of energies within me. first, it felt like somebody else other than myself, like God. It was so magnificent, so energetic, so powerful. But then I realized it was myself that appeared so outrageously, extraordinarily splendid, that I couldn't believe it was myself. But after that, it felt more like it was a partnership between God, the divine in me, and me, as the I am, as the energy, as the life force manifesting through this body. There was the emptiness aspect at first, and then 15 years later, out of that emptiness came the explosion of the life energy that had always been there, but I had never seen before. And that was triggered in part by a human relationship. Correct. One of my students. I had a love affair without sex. We just loved each other so strongly that out of that love arose an extreme love for myself. And because I saw in her that I was loving myself, I saw that her self was loving me, and there was a oneness there. So how would you describe your teachings now? It's hard to say. There is a continuing unfolding. It wasn't a once and ending all. It's just that my understanding becomes more and more subtle, deeper, and more aspects of myself are revealed constantly along the way. The human aspects, as well as the transcendental aspects. There's a constant changing. Sometimes I go for long periods of knowing absolutely nothing. And then suddenly, new understanding will come to me. And then, all of the understanding will go away. And a new understanding, a deeper understanding will come about 6 months later. It's like you're a train station and the trains are coming and going constantly. Right, but mostly coming. And they pass through Muzika station. Yeah, that's true. They go. Do you still feel the presence of Robert? A couple of years ago, I would say I had. But now I think it's an illusion, that it just feels that way. But Robert did talk of having visions of Jesus and other masters like Nisargadatta and Ramana. Absolutely. I don't know what that means. I have no idea what that means. But it's not really important to self-realization. It's beside the point. Yeah, it's beside the point. Well, what's it worth all the... What's the positive advertisement for enlightenment then? If there's no transcending death, and if that's the reason most people get into spirituality. Well, the thing is, when you know who you are, you become fearless. Because you know who you are, you're no longer wavering. You're no longer undecided. You no longer wonder which way to go. Because you're totally in tune with who you are and your fate and the way the world is. And you're okay with it, whatever is happening. And that energy within, the Shakti within, you feel it constantly with all of its power. So you become fearless. And you become certain of wherever you are at that moment, even if there is no mind involved, even if you don't think. It's okay. You're not racked by confusion or indecision about what to do or where to go. It's an end to anxiety. It's an end to indecision and confusion. And how does it change your relationship to other people? I don't know. I don't have much to do with other people now. There's not a lot of desire to be amongst people. Or in crowds. Or even to be teaching anymore. I don't see many people with enough, what would you call it? inner drive to become self-realized, to be able to persist in it with any degree of energy. People get distracted, like you, with too many other things. What is enlightenment? I don't know. It has 1,000 meanings according to different people. Robert said, when I told him I had this experience, the first enlightenment was that there was no inside, no outside, no Ed Muzika inside. The second one happened later, in 1995, where I woke up in the morning and transitioned from sleep to waking without changing at all. It was like sleep was a state that came to me, waking was a state that came to me, but neither was really touching me. When I told Robert that, he said, that's it, that's enlightenment. But then 15 years later, I had the experience of the explosion of the manifest consciousness in me. Ever since, the divine energy within has exerted far more power on me and my understanding, and the unfolding of the spirit within me than those awakening experiences in 1995. The ones that come now with the rush of energy, the life force inside me, in a sense, makes me more human. Because my body is so alive. Every atom feels alive with consciousness. And that wasn't the case back in 1995 when I let go of the body altogether. The body wasn't there. Now you can't make me think that the body doesn't exist no matter what, because I can feel it. I can feel the energies in it. I can feel the energies that arise through it and go from the body into the world. I can feel my aliveness. I can also watch the various states of sleep and waking come and go. But nobody's going to convince me that the body doesn't exist or it's unreal, the classic Advaita line. In 2010, I began seeing energy patterns within myself, of the descent of golden light into me that felt like the descent of grace, where all my sins and all my crookedness was wiped out and I was washed clean. I also saw the flow of energies inside of me from my heart chakra. Now the states that are coming are of just infinite relaxation. The whole world would gradually disappear, and I would see nothing. I would hear nothing. I would know nothing. There was no movement. And I would be just completely, blissfully happy. Unbelievably happy. This is what I think Robert was talking about. You know, Robert would say when he was asked how he saw the world, I see it the same way as you, but I know that you're consciousness. Your consciousness means you are. Matthew is consciousness. I am consciousness. Right. You're not individuals. You're just consciousness. Right. The objects of consciousness are the same as the entire field of consciousness. There's no isolation of a center of consciousness in that object I see out there. It's all consciousness. Everything is consciousness. Objects are consciousness. The field of consciousness is consciousness. Your consciousness is consciousness. There's just one consciousness. Interview 2. A conversation between Frederick, Prack, and Matthew Brown, Kensington Market, Toronto, October 2nd, 2016. Fred, have you ever been interviewed in a comic book before? Never. But I've often thought of myself as a cartoon character. Good. That is exactly what will happen. The real me. Finally. So, we'll start off with a general question. What is meditation, and what is the point of it? I think understanding what we are from a meditative point of view is important. And that is that we are consciousness manifesting in all the things we think and do. Everything that manifests in our lives is really consciousness vibrating. There isn't anything in consciousness but consciousness. The experiences that seem so solid are translations of impulses that come from our senses. Yeah, if you see something, that's consciousness vibrating because of the part of the central nervous system that's involved in vision. And if you hear something, a cab or whatever, that's the hearing part of the brain. It's all just creating a world in our minds and consciousness. Fortunately, we seem to be able to store these impressions, and we create a whole world in our minds that represents the world that we live in and that we walk around in. Hopefully, that inner world is congruent with the outer world. Otherwise, we'd step out into the street and get run over by a car. And less than that, little things like if we're in a hurry and we go out a doorway, then have to turn to the right and we knock our shoulder on the door jamb. Boom. Our inner model is incongruent, 3 feet, with what's actually there in front of us, 2 feet, 8 inches. We're already going down the hall in our minds, instead of going around the door jamb that we whack our shoulder on. Bah! The inner world is so real to us. It has become so real to us that we get involved in all the constructs and all the values that we apply to these ideas and things in our inner mind models that actually take our attention. We live in that model rather than in the world. Most people do. Meditation is a way of getting out of the model and the hold that the model has on the ego mind. So we step out of the model into pure awareness, into pure consciousness, and we're free of it. If we do that over and over and over again, then the model becomes what it's supposed to be, a tool, so we can organize an incredible amount of information that's coming from our environment. So the idea of deep meditation is to become aware of awareness and eventually know that that's our true self. Awareness? So is there a world then? Absolutely. If everything is consciousness and all we're aware of is what's in consciousness, there is the world. If I try to walk through that tree, my nose will get hurt, and maybe other things. There is a world, but we experience it through the filter of our models. And we're engaged in the model. We think the model is real. We apply what's in the model to the world. That's where the word should comes from. Because this should be like this in my model. And if it's not, then I'm unhappy with it. Right. Most of the suffering we have comes from the shoulds not being met. What would life be like in the way you described, if you were able to be identified with awareness? Like I said, you experience the model. It becomes a tool rather than being your reality. The model is a model. It's limited because it doesn't have all the information. Right. It's a representation. It's a symbol. Correct. But we're imposing that on the world, and so we find somebody who we really like, and initially there's attraction and whatnot. Yeah. Then we get together with them, and after a while, it's called marriage. After a while, on another level of the relationship, they're not exactly the way that you think they should be, according to your model. That's right. One of the attitudes is, well, I know he's not perfect, but I'll fix that. Or, I know that she doesn't meet up to the standard, but we can change that. We'll work on it. Are you saying that roughly? You're aware that you have some impulse to change people close to you, to conform to how you think they should be? If you manage to be aware of that, to see that, how does that change your relationship? Then you're there with what is, and you're okay with it. Well, it's what it is. You know, if a car is coming down the street, you don't just stand there and be okay with it if it's hitting you. That's kind of an extreme metaphor for a relationship. If you've got extreme Alzheimer's, then you do just stand there and watch it, because there's no meaning. The model is gone, so there's no meaning to that image which you're looking at. So if you're in a relationship and the person's behavior is such that they're not listening to you, and they're blocking you out, if you're aware that your impulse to make them listen to you is based on your idea of how things should be, I guess it's unforeseeable what your reaction will be. You'll just be bringing a greater number of resources to the situation. It depends on your history, right? If you were ignored by the people important to you, like your parents and teachers all through childhood, and friends, then this is just another example. And you become very angry that you're still being ignored. Yep. Or you might think it's bizarrely weird that this person's behaving like that and walk away. It really depends on your history. Your history is important in this scenario. Your mind model is made up of your history. All of the experiences that you've had so far. In the first part of life, children are just incredibly curious about everything. They want to know and touch and taste and look and smell and listen, and they populate their model. But around puberty, something bizarre happens, besides puberty, where angst is dominating. That is, we make a switch, and we start to think that our models are reality. And from then on, we try to make the world conform to the model. I think that the key is knowing what is beyond the model and living with that. All of the teenage angst happens because of the incongruity between the model and the world, and the people in the world. As we get older, there are still people who are in their 80s that are just as anxious as they were when they were 12, because that's the way their model is structured. In the model, we create beliefs about how the world is. If my beliefs include an impression of me being inadequate, or me being aggressive, or rejected, or any number of things, and that's the way I'll structure the world. I'll see situations in the world that way. So the model is, to some extent, self-perpetuating. It can be. It doesn't just characterize what happened in the past and see patterns there. It projects those as likelihoods and then works, to some extent, to perpetuate those likelihoods into actual events. Right. Until we get sick and tired of being sick and tired. Then we do something different, which means meditating, right? And then we step out of the model altogether. Because you can play games in the model and with the model forever. If your identity is in the model, then you're screwed, because you can't get out of that. Yeah. You just go round and round and round. But if you step out of the model into awareness and do that often enough, you begin to realize that's the only thing in your life that never changes. And in essence, that's truly what you are. Then you start to get a different perspective and you start to shift your identity into that. And then you're free of the model. The model is just a tool instead of being the world. That's a great answer. And you have more questions. I do have another question if you don't mind. Go for it. What started you on the spiritual path? Actually, it was the wife of a business associate of my father's. My father's friend died. She had enough money to travel around the world for a few years. She spent a couple years in a Zen abbey in Kyoto. She'd go around and just visit people and stay with them and spread the joy. She seemed to like me, and when I was 13 and going through puberty, she taught me Zen meditation. For years, she sent me books on meditation from wherever she was around the world. I don't know what happened to her. You don't know what happened to her? Yeah. Whether she went off and stayed in a monastery somewhere or met somebody and continued her life that way, I don't know. It just stopped, and my parents didn't know anything about it either. I practiced Zen meditation on and off for 10 years. A little longer than that, 13 years. Then I read an article in Time magazine. It was about transcendental meditation on campus. The writer called Maharishi the giggling guru and said that, he's just full of it. And everybody knew meditation was difficult and everything that he said was just wrong. But the fellow who wrote the article said enough about what Maharishi thought it was that it made total sense to me. So the article was meant to be pejorative. Oh, totally. But you just skipped over the parts where the author's judgment was and sifted out the parts where he actually talked about Maharishi's methods. He said it could be spontaneous and effortless in the nature of the mind. The nature of the mind was to meditate and transcend thought and be left with pure awareness. So I pursued that by writing every university that was mentioned in the article. And got no response. Then one day a friend of mine was driving me up James Street in Hamilton. Oh, we've got to stop here. Jump. Oh my God, oh wow. Maharishi, Mahesh Yogi. I'm leafing through the book, and my buddy has parked the car and comes in, and he goes to the back of the place where the owner is standing there with his mouth open looking at me. He had just finished putting the book on the shelf there. So that's the way things lined up. Yeah. And so he told me about the people who had brought the book in. And apparently there was a transcendental meditation center about 2 blocks from where I lived in Toronto. CN Tower not actually built until 1976. TM. I went to the lectures and I learned the technique. The first time I was in pure transcendence, pure awareness. The first time you tried it? Then I went home with my buddy who started TM at the same time, and we were gone for like 3 hours. It's just pure awareness. It was wonderful. What year would this have been about? That was 68. Right. 1968. Before that, I had worked in construction in the summer times as a student. And one day, it was a hot summer day. We had lunch. I just ate half my sandwich and lay down on a plank. And there was bliss. All of a sudden, my legs started to tingle. My whole body was tingling. and there was light. I just seemed to go into the light, and then there was just light. The conversation of the people around me disappeared, and there was just light, until somebody kicked me and said, "Get back to work." This was when you were a teenager? Yeah, I was 17. That happened for 2 years in the summer times. When I went back to school in the fall, I didn't have time to lie down like that, so I just forgot all about it. You forgot about turning into light. When I returned the following summer, I was really excited about getting back to work and taking a break. And it did happen. Yes. Strange. Then I had a motorcycle accident, and I was dead on the operating table for about 45 minutes, so my doctor told me. You were dead on the operating table for 5 minutes? Yes, 4 or 5 minutes. And in that experience, I became that light again, and that was really wonderful. Basically, that lasted for 3 or 4 months. All that time you experienced being the light, everything I looked at was light, scintillating light. In the experience, I was the light I was experiencing. In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, on the first day when a person has died, part of the Lama's instructions are, if you see in front of you a beautiful light and recognize that's what you are, you'll be free of the cycle of birth and death forever. It's liberating. Right. And so that was very clearly. The light. Then I learned TM after that. Did you experience the light again through TM? It was always there. Do you think that there's a significant difference between TM and the Zen teachings? Maybe TM is more tuned to the Vedic philosophy than Zen, which is a combination of Buddhism and Taoism. The direct experience of the transcendental awareness is the same. In your professional life, when I met you, around 1997 to 2002, you were a psychotherapeutic counselor and a registered massage therapist, a hypnotherapist, and a number of other healing modalities. How long had those been part of the picture? When I was teaching TM, the energy work started happening. That was really good, and I was sort of attracted more and more to the healing part. The psychotherapeutic modality that I did was a combination of Eastern and Western thought. Beyond the theory, massage has always, for the most part, been intuitive. Healing was the biggest part of it, you know? I think one of the things that I appreciate you as a person is the insight that spiritual practice is part of healing, and healing is part of spiritual practice. There's no dividing line. Because I guess in some ways, you could say finding that you're one with everything and disappearing into light is no doubt a wonderful experience. But it's something that happens only for you. It might not help other people very much, theoretically, but maybe it does, I don't know. I think it's all one thing. The body isn't separate from the mind, or the emotions, or the spirit. None of them are disconnected, separate entities, in spite of Western philosophy. If you're low or miss 5 nights of sleep, the mind is dull. And you don't have anything to do with that. And the other way around. If you're anxious about something, your body will react in a totally different way. If you're feeling really good, you're really enjoying yourself. Obviously, the changes that happen on the mental level or the physical level affect everything else. Spirit is part of that, and that's the pure awareness. Nothing exists outside of that awareness. So awareness is like the gravitational or electromagnetic field. Whatever manifests in it is of the nature of that awareness, so that the field is being expressed. All of our experience, the whole spectrum of possible experience, comes from awareness. All separate entities come from that field and are part of that field. Is that God? You can label it any way you want. It can be transcendental consciousness. It can be Buddha nature. It can be Christ consciousness. It can be God. Love, pure creative intelligence, however things manifest. In Vedic literature and tradition, the absolute, pure awareness, manifests as Sat Chit Ananda. Sat is pure being, Chit is pure mind, and awareness is pure bliss, pure love. However it's expressed in whatever channel it takes, it would be one of those. So it could be mental, emotional, and physical. I mean, hatred and anger are really just an extremely limited expression of pure love. Right. As long as you have gone beyond the mind model. If you're in your mind model, it could be, I want to annihilate you. I love you. I love you too. I want to exterminate you. I love you too. Ha ha ha. Well, that's where the shift of identity obviously makes a huge difference, and I've experienced it myself through applying some of the advice that you've given me. It's a shift of perspective where the truth of those statements is felt rather than known as an idea. It sort of arises on its own. But it's a practice for me. It's not automatic all the time, that's for sure. I mean, I work at it. It's very valuable to me. Well, that's how we grow and eventually shift the identity completely to consciousness. The last question is, what is enlightenment? What is enlightenment? Enlightenment is identifying with your true nature. It's interesting that my experience is pure light, and that's one of the experiences of pure awareness. Light is the central part of the word enlightenment. That's right. Basically, enlightenment means direct experience of pure awareness, but it also means not just having an experience of pure awareness, but shifting your identity to that. The idea of self-realization is knowing who you are, and then everything in life manifests from that. So all experience comes from that. Well, the comic is almost over now. We've covered how I came across meditation, how I decided to do it, from Toronto to Montreal to India to Windsor, back to Toronto. Brief recaps of the lives and teachings of two of the great ancient masters, Buddha and Lao Tzu. Some masters from the past 100 years or so, Nisargadatta Maharaj, Ramana Maharshi, and interviews with two living masters whom I've been lucky to learn from, Ed Muzika and Fred Prack. Finally, here I am. Here we are. Are we any closer to knowing what meditation is, why people do it, or what enlightenment is? Why meditate? I hope readers can put together some idea of this for themselves. My wife thought this was a sandwich. From this comic book and from their own experience, then start or continue their path. It is ultimately the kind of thing you have to do alone, even amidst other people, the key being yourself. Actually, I originally wrote quite a bit for this Why Meditate section, but in the end I boiled it down to just a few condensed phrases. Just a few compact phrases. I hope that's okay. After that, I'll share the names of some books that have really helped over the years. And finally, as promised, I'll talk about how to meditate. Why meditate? Satisfy life's purpose. Peace. Love. Calm. Circumvent consensus bullshit. enlarged from preoccupation with the mortal frame. A live chain of instructional wisdom. This project has been a process of discovery and clarification for me too. Every situation of limiting and loss can expand through meditative awareness into unexpected opportunities for love, compassion, and positive potential. I've never seen any real window for happiness or vista for change in my own life except through meditation, awareness, and pattern healing. Books that have helped. The Dance of Life by Edward Hall showed how different cultures conceive time, including sacred time. The Tao of Physics by Fritjof Capra compared discoveries in quantum theory and astrophysics with ancient Eastern teachings. Essays in Zen Buddhism by D.T. Suzuki introduced an idea of the existential void as something positive and even beautiful. Baba by Arnold Schulman showed a young writer like myself encountering a guru and feeling faith. Lives of a Bengal Lancer by Francis Yates Brown introduced the city of Benares, Varanasi, on the Ganges as a place to learn yoga. Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, a new translation, Stephen Mitchell, taught strategies for staying centered and flexible at a difficult time in my life. Nothing Special, Living Zen by Charlotte Joko Beck held out the hand of a possibility to heal my own suffering at a time of drowning. Zen in the Art of Archery by Eugen Herrigel equated spiritual and artistic discipline. The archer, the arrow, and the target are one. The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, another ray of light, showed every person has a personal legend to fulfill when I was lost. An End to Suffering by Pankaj Mishra and I Am That by Nisargadatta. I took Mishra's book tracing Buddha's lifetime through modern India on pilgrimage and traded it for Nisargadatta. It's here now. Are you? Bhagavan Das, one of the original Western dropouts who loved the Ganges in India, then returned to the USA. The Power of the Presence, edited by David Godman, volumes 1, 2, and 3. Collection of first-hand accounts from devotees of Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi. Beautiful. Well, that's the end of the comic book section. The next part is actually some instruction about how to meditate and things I think are important. I'm going to leave the block of text here for a moment. You can have a scan through it. If you're interested in how to meditate, pay attention to the text. I'm going to grab a bit more water, and then I'll read through it. If you're not interested in anything other than the comic part, you can now leave and do something else. I'm going to grab some water. Possibly, I'm not the best person to teach people how to meditate. Still, if I've practiced meditation for 20 years, been on a pilgrimage to Buddha's lifetime spots in Nepal and India, taken Buddha's precepts and lived as a lodger in a Korean Zen temple for 7 months, studied Tibetan language and medicine for a year and a half, done a 10-day Tibetan retreat, taken yoga and Tai Chi classes, helped transcribe and edit manuscripts from established teachers, and practiced self-healing visualization techniques for more than 15 years. In addition to visiting temples and sacred places in India, Nepal, Vietnam, South Korea, and Japan, maybe I do have a few things to share. Devotion. Devotion is an important part of practice. It's the cultivation of gratitude, appreciation, love, and respect. It helps to have a photo or statue of an important teacher or deity in your life somewhere in your home where you can offer either verbally or silently. Thanks. You can also daily recite the three refuges, as in Buddhism, chant mantras or hymns, as in Hinduism and many other faiths, make bows or prostrations, as in Zen, and offer fruit and flowers on an altar of your making. Of course, you later eat the fruit, but now it is blessed. You can also light candles and incense too, if you like that sort of thing. Compassion. As a silent practice, it helps during the day to keep feeling where you are present in your body, or for some people outside it. This can be your sense of presence, or your I am sensation. Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi recommended remaining present in the heart center, or spiritual heart, 2 finger widths to the right of the center of your chest. I often use the heart center. I find refocusing on my basic sense of presence gets me past the thinking mind and makes me far more empathetic, both towards myself and others. It's easier to feel where people are coming from, free of the encumbrances of my own judgments, fears, or wants. It also really helps to silently visualize healing other people's physical or emotional pain, even without their knowing. I imagine transforming their pain, using a golden ray of pure love from my own heart center until they become the same light of golden love. I also try to include other people in their lives whom they might be entangled in patterns with, and they are shining and happy too. This is helpful with strangers, loved ones, and or people who really piss you off or scare you. Meditation. After 20 years of learning travel, and times when I didn't even practice at all, this is what I now do every day, along with devotion and compassion, as I noted before. It certainly isn't the only way to meditate, or the best way for everyone, but it does amalgamate many of the basics. And I really recommend going out and finding a living teacher to get some personalized instruction, if this is something you're interested in. A. Posture. Eyes open or closed, optional. I keep my eyes closed. Either in a chair or cross-legged on a firm cushion, or even better, quarter, half, or full lotus position. Sit with your back straight. A straight back clears your breathing passage, aligns your body's energy channels, and calms you down, making you firm like a mountain. Duration. Most important is to sit regularly, even if it's only for 5 or 10 minutes per session. I sit for an informal 10 minutes every afternoon and a formal 20 or 30 minutes every night before sleeping. Yes, some people do intensive retreats or multiple 30-minute sittings in a row, and this is great. But for me, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Take it easy on yourself. Attention. Fred Prack shared a 3-legged stool of meditation practice with me, which you can include, shifting your attention in the following ways. 1. Listening to your bodily sensations, thoughts, feelings, nearby sounds, smells, etc., without reacting. Just being aware and receptive, neither grabbing onto nor pushing away anything that comes into your awareness. This can open a dialogue with your own body and illuminate the behind the scenes of your regular daily consciousness. 2. Healing. Places in the body where emotional pain or trauma is stored as blockages. Initially, your body creates these to protect you, but as parts of your world beliefs, they can become negative patterns. You can visualize the blockage, trace it back in time, encapsulate and cast it back out of the body, lock it safely, then heal your own inner child with golden love energy from your heart center. And together with your now happy inner child, beam golden love energy directly into the locked pattern until it transmutes into glowing love energy like a shining sun. When this is done, you can absorb your inner child, then the healed pattern back into your heart center, and quietly observe the changes for 10 or 15 minutes. I must note, this takes training and practice. I mention it because it's been so helpful for me. Fred does go into a bit of detail about it in his complete, unedited interview at the end of this book, but ultimately it takes personalized instruction. 3. Abiding as presence. This is the final leg of the stool. This resonates with Muzika, Nisargadatta, and Ramana's advice to abide as the I am, the basic sense of awareness, and sink or fall back into it. Every night, just as Ed taught me, I follow my sense of identity or being a personal self, from my brain down the back of my neck and my spine to my heart center on the right side of my chest. This is a pleasant sensation and resembles unconditional love or complete letting go of all worries. I feel a sort of deep smile, like a benevolent inner Santa Claus is grinning through me. Typically, I then disappear completely. It is like darkness, but not ignorance. All phenomenal conditions seem to evaporate, and instead of identifying as a person named Matthew, I am a nameless, formless, shapeless, infinite void of awareness, which has no body, thoughts, or others. It could be the Tao. It could be the fourth sense of Turiya consciousness from Hinduism. It could be the non-dual ground of limitless potential from which the world manifests. At any rate, as Fred says, residing here repeatedly enlarges the nervous system's capacity for sustaining greater and greater revelations of our own true nature, as light or otherwise. I've not had the experience of pure light. Anyway, stepping away from my selfish concerns as a thinking, planning, fearing, hoping, wanting, remembering body like this every day really puts everything else into perspective. After re-emerging into identity as a person with a name, in a place, having a body, I rest and observe for 5 to 10 minutes, recalibrating and osmosing whatever has been realized on whichever level. Please, remember to go easy on your nervous system and loved ones. However, I truly do think this meditative awareness can really help the world now. Thanks so much, and hope you enjoyed it. Caveat A. Please, if you are in physical or emotional pain, seek the assistance of a qualified therapist or doctor. I am not one. Caveat B. Although I have belonged to groups and temples over my life in the last few decades of spiritual practice, currently I do not. Yet, find a teacher you trust and a few spiritual friends no matter what. Well, that's it for this graphic novel. The rest of the book, in the hard copy, looks at the people who influenced me, comic book artists and writers, and then it actually has the full transcripts of my interviews with Fred and Ed. But I'm not going to go through those because I think that's something that people could read in the book. If you want an ebook copy of this, please message me on Facebook or send me an email at teacherinthewry@hotmail.com. That's teacherinthewry@hotmail.com. Take care. It's been a pleasure sharing this with you again, and I hope to talk to you or see you, whether virtually or whatever, during the pandemic sometime soon. Take care. I love you.